In a small countryside church, the Reverend was feeling unwell. A doctor came to examine him and, after a careful checkup, asked, "Is your spleen in good condition?" The Reverend had no idea what the doctor meant by spleen, but he was too embarrassed to ask. Instead, he nodded and replied confidently, "No, I don't have any issues with that." After the doctor left, the Reverend remained puzzled. Not knowing what spleen meant, he called his young assistant, Charlie, and tried to subtly figure it out. "Charlie, do you remember what I taught you about the spleen?" The Reverend hoped Charlie knew, but the assistant was just as clueless. Yes, Reverend. I might have forgotten some of it, though." The Reverend, not wanting to seem foolish, replied, "Well, I won't explain it again, but it's better for you to recall it by yourself." He sent Charlie to the doctor's house to fetch some medicine, while also telling him to ask the neighbors if they knew about spleen. Charlie walked around the village, asking people about the spleen. But no one knew what it was, although they all pretended they did. Some said, "It fell and broke," while others mentioned, "Someone borrowed mine." One villager even claimed, "We had a lot, but we used them all up in a soup." Eventually, Charlie arrived at the doctor's house and asked him directly, "What exactly is a spleen?" The doctor laughed and explained, "The spleen is an organ, but I just asked as a medical question. It's not something people talk about much unless they're sick." Charlie, realizing the Reverend had misunderstood, decided to have some fun. He returned to the church and told the Reverend, "The spleen is actually a ceremonial cup." The Reverend, not wanting to seem ignorant, proudly said, "Exactly. It's a sacred vessel." The Reverend then told Charlie to prepare the treasured spleen for the next guest. Charlie, trying not to laugh, grabbed a random cup and placed it in a fancy box, waiting for the right moment. When the doctor returned for a follow-up visit, the Reverend was eager to show off his spleen. He said proudly, "Doctor, it turns out we have a spleen after all." The doctor, confused, responded, "That's good to hear." The Reverend, grinning, opened the box and said, "Let me show you my prized spleen. You'll appreciate the craftsmanship." Charlie brought in the box, barely able to contain his laughter. The doctor looked at it and said, "But this is just a drinking cup." The Reverend realized he had been tricked and angrily scolded Charlie, who responded cheekily, "Oh, don't worry, Reverend. It's just a little spleen joke.